Well, hello. I was a couple minutes behind, but I'm so glad to be here and be talking to everybody about this incredible, annoying topic. But it's very important that I share with people, what we have all been through when we're so desperately trying to find proof in these relationships. Like, is it bad enough? Right. And that's the hardest part, is that we're always looking for the thing that is enough. And I always feel like there's never going to be enough proof that we finally decide, is it enough? And so the truth is, we don't need to catch them, right? Most survivors of abuse don't stay because they don't know what's happening. They stay because they do know what's happening, and they're afraid that knowing still won't be enough. So like, really let that land, let that sink in, right? This talk is not going to be about what proof is enough. It's about realizing that you already have the proof. It's about understanding that proof is not actually the problem, right? It's actually permission. I want you to give yourself permission. So like I said, you don't need to catch him cheating. You don't need to, have him hit you or hit you again, or be screaming at you again, or with another girl on Instagram again. You don't need the police to believe you. You don't need your friends to believe you. You don't need your mom to validate you. You don't need proof to leave. You need self-trust to leave. And easier said than done, right? So if you don't already know me, my name is Lisa Sunny, and I am the founder of Stronger Than Before Coaching. I'm a trauma-informed coach, and I help women really untangle trauma bonds. That's my main focus, and breaking trauma bonds, but rebuilding after trauma bonds as well. But I help people identify abuse that doesn't leave bruises, and then just rebuild that self-worth after toxic and abusive relationships. And the truth is, I have been where many of you have also been, doubting what I knew deep down and waiting for that kind of aha moment that would finally be my own permission to leave. And that moment truly never came. I had to create it. And that's what this talk is really for. I want you to be able to create your own moment of truth and clarity, so you stop waiting for proof and you start listening to yourself. So I think what we think we need, what I see in my practice as a coach, what I see people need and say to me is like, if I had proof, then I would leave. If he did this one more time, then I would leave. But what are you actually waiting for? Truly, what are you waiting for? Like a smoking gun, a text message, cheating, physical violence, some kind of big dramatic betrayal? Because the truth is, more often than not, they've already done that. And the trick with conditioning is that this is happening, but you get conditioned to tolerate more and more and more abuse. And what you think is, if you could finally catch them in the act, or have a photograph, or have absolute clear evidence, but don't you find that stuff happens and then you still stay? The amount of things that I put up with that I never expected to, right? But I think we want this clear cut moment that we can kind of point to and go like, that is why I'm leaving. But we're trying to build a case. And I almost feel like we think we're standing in a courtroom, right? I need evidence, indisputable evidence. But the truth is, and you hear a lot of people say this online, though it irritates me because I get it, but like, if you don't trust your partner, you already know it's over. If you don't trust them, doesn't even matter what you find, you should already leave. Easier said than done, right? When you're in a trauma bond and you are banking on that evidence, or you've been gaslit and lied to for so long, it's wild, right? You've been taught that you're going to be questioned and doubted or blamed, but that you need evidence, right? They flip things on you so much. And deep down, what they're asking you is, why is this wrong? And you're asking yourself, is this bad enough? Especially if they've done worse in the past, and maybe some of the newer things that they're doing are not as bad. But the truth is, you have to look at this like a pile of things, and it's just one more thing on top of another. It's like it never ends. But I think that we need somebody to almost say to us, like, your pain counts, right? You're allowed to leave. You have permission to leave, but you only need your own permission to leave. You don't need his permission. Definitely don't need his permission. And you don't need the permission of anyone around you. Listen, the truth is, you can leave because it's Tuesday. You can leave for any reason. Anyone can leave any relationship for any reason. You don't need a reason, but you have reasons. That's why you're here. That's why you're watching this. Now, I invite you to subscribe to my channel if this kind of content resonates with you, if you are in or coming out of and healing from an abusive relationship, if you've ever been in a trauma bond or you're in one now. I would love to have you hit subscribe so that you can get more content like this. I also have a free quiz on my website, and it'll be in the description as well. Am I trauma bonded? 2 minutes, instant results, and you'll find out if you are in a trauma bond or if you've broken your trauma bond already. So I want to just kind of go into some of these points, right? Like maybe you feel afraid that the pain doesn't count if it's not visible pain, if you can't see it, if you don't have evidence of it, or that no one will believe you if they can't see it themselves, if it's just your word against someone else's word. You want people to believe you. That's needing the validation of others, and I get it, but it's not the goal, right? We worry that people are going to be like, come on, you're overreacting, right? That's not abuse. Okay. And you hear people say things, right? Like, oh, some men just do that. Men cheat, men lie, men don't actually as a collective. That's not all men, right? But you're waiting for the kind of pain that nobody could possibly deny, but you don't need that. And self-validation is huge. I teach that in my one-on-one coaching practice, and I teach that in my self-paced online course called the Trauma Bond Recovery Course. It's an incredible skill to have. I want to tell you a quick story about me before I get into some more details here. But I remember, and it was August 2020, I remember I found this text on my abuser's phone, and it was him asking a woman for snuggles. That's not code for something, literally snuggles. And it was a woman whose name I'd heard, but he had said she was just a friend, right? And so, like, obviously my gut is like, oh my God, this isn't right. Like, I mean, when I tell you, it was like my body was like, I can't even describe the feeling. It was like everything. I went just deaf. I couldn't even imagine this can't be happening. My brain immediately tried to rationalize it, right? Okay, this looks bad, but maybe it was just innocent. Maybe he's just flirting. Maybe it's not cheating. Have they snuggled before? Why would they be snuggling? Does that mean he slept with her? Oh my God. You know, I've got to be overreacting. He would never, because of all the things he'd ever done to me, he would never cheat on me. Skip to the end. He was totally cheating, but that's not the point. In the moment, I was telling myself this, right? I told myself that text message wasn't actually proof. I thought about it and I was like, okay, I'm going to confront him. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to confront him. Well, I already knew what would happen, and I'm sure many of you can guess as well. He would darvo me. It's a form of gaslighting, deny, attack, reverse victim and offender, right? That's not what it meant. Oh my God, you're so crazy. Snuggle doesn't mean anything. That's nothing. I just meant like a hug. Then he would attack me for going through his phone, which many people in the comment section, I'm certain will do the same. You shouldn't have been going through his phone. Anyways, if you've never been trauma bonded to somebody who lies to you repeatedly, maybe take a walk, right? And then he would reverse. I can't believe you don't trust me. You're the problem, right? You made that. You're the problem. This is what I was picturing. And funny story, that is exactly what happened when I later confronted him. But the point is, I knew that I would walk away feeling completely crazy, and I didn't allow it for that message to just be enough. And the truth is, it was enough. That message was enough. I would never send a message like that. I don't want to be in a relationship with somebody who would send a message like that, who would disrespect our relationship in that manner. So even if nothing physical had happened, I have to tell you that text message was enough. And I should have left. And it's easy to say, yeah, you should have just left him. I mean, listen, when we leave abusers, bad things happen, dangerous things happen, emotionally difficult things happen. Your life gets turned upside down. So it wasn't just easy for me to just leave, but I was doubting myself. And the truth is, and I didn't know it at the time, but I later found out, I was stuck in something called betrayal blindness. That's a term that was coined by psychologist Jennifer Freed. And fundamentally, I would say the definition is the unawareness, the not knowing, or the forgetting of betrayal, specifically when it threatens a relationship that you see as necessary, like a husband, a boyfriend, a partner, a mother, a boss, even, like these things. So it's not denial in that sort of shallow sense. It's honestly this deep protective defense mechanism. It is so much deeper, because some people will say, yeah, denial. No, deeper, much deeper. Your brain is literally blocking the awareness. Picture a block of awareness, because acknowledging the betrayal would require you to take an action that you're not ready to take. Maybe you're not emotionally ready to take. Maybe you are physically in danger if you take it, which I was in physical danger. So this can show up and kind of look like when you start to explain away the red flags, like maybe it was just flirting, right? When it was obviously cheating. And to be fair, flirting in that manner, many could argue, and I certainly would, that that is in fact cheating. But you feel something's wrong, but you kind of can't quite name it. Maybe you emotionally disconnect from what you know logically. You get stuck in the like, I just need more time. I just need more evidence. I just need to know more information. And or you might even start to remember selectively. You might start glossing over really painful parts to actually protect your hope in the relationship. So it's common in childhood abuse survivors, especially with parent betrayal. And it really explains why many intelligent, self-aware women feel really frozen in abusive or toxic love trauma bonds. And it's a survival strategy when your body's in danger, but your emotions are so invested. So it's really hard to take a move in any direction. You can only see what your brain believes that you're actually ready to act on. So you have to imagine that you're standing there and unconsciously you are not ready to take any kind of action. And it's so painful and so difficult that your brain protects itself by becoming blind to something that is wildly obvious to anyone else. Healing requires confronting this, but I think we need to sort of gently confront what we already know, but had to forget to survive. Now, gaslighting and trauma bonding play this massive role in what I'm talking about here. Gaslighting makes you question your own perception. Gaslighting isn't lying, like betrayal blindness isn't denial. It's so much deeper than that, right? It's somebody who is willfully, intentionally trying to make you have a distorted sense of reality, really make you question yourself. The whole purpose of it is to create self-doubt, even just a tiny bit of self-doubt, just that little shred of, I was so sure that he wouldn't cheat, as an example. So I had just enough doubt that that couldn't be what it was, even though it was so clear, right? It was so unbelievably obvious in hindsight. But you might hear that you're imagining things. This could be your own voice. It could be their voice telling you directly. But like, you're so dramatic. Why are you always trying to make me the bad guy? You're always blowing things out of proportion. It's like you like to argue. They always give you this, right? But eventually you just stop trusting your gut. Now, trauma bonding is an unhealthy emotional attachment in a relationship where there's abuse and devaluation mixed with kindness and positive intermittent reinforcement. And it creates this kind of emotional addiction. So you might see like kindness followed by cruelty and then affection again. And your brain starts craving these good moments and tolerating the bad ones just to kind of get those good moments. You start to chase it. In fact, you start to associate the highs with the lows. So you normalize mistreatment. You're being conditioned to accept bad behavior so that you don't even realize anymore that like they've cheated 3-4 times. Maybe the worst one was the first, but like, is that true? Was the first the worst? Or were they all bad? Were they all betrayals? But we start to confuse anxiety with the intensity of love. We blame ourselves for reacting to his abuse. We blame ourselves for not reacting to his abuse. But I think in this case, you see the pattern, but you really hope that this time will finally be different. You're so afraid of losing the high that comes with that really good version of him, because there's always a good version, right? I think people on the outside really love to see like it's abuse and it's obvious and you should leave. But the trick with an abusive relationship is that there is always good. And even in some relationships, and I hear this, that it's not necessarily that it's good, but the absence of abuse starts to feel like good because you're not being abused. So just even not being abused starts to be the high when that's not what it used to be, but that's the conditioning that comes with it. That's the grooming. So you start to think that it's your fault that you're having these trauma responses. You think that it's your fault that you're having these feelings and that your feelings are in fact the problem, not the behavior. Something that Dr. Peter Salerno once said to me that was so just like obvious and yet so profound was that somebody who's abusive or specifically like clinically narcissistic, they don't think that there's a problem. The only problem is that you're talking about it. So like just using cheating as an example, the cheating itself is not the problem. It's you bringing it up. It's you talking about it. If you would stop talking about the cheating, then it wouldn't be a problem. And to other people, we're like, what? But think about how their mind is working, right? It's not the behavior that's the problem. It's your feelings. It's you talking about it that's the problem. So your sense of reality starts to bend towards his version because it's safer. It is emotionally safer. So this all contributes to this betrayal blindness. Now, the truth is, why not enough proof is really just this system that perpetuates self-doubt, right? It's a symptom of self-doubt. When you say, I just need proof, or I just need more proof, what you're actually saying is, I do not trust myself. And that makes sense in an abusive relationship. It really does. You've internalized the idea that your intuition, that your emotions, your perception are just flawed completely, right? You picked this person, the relationship is so volatile, or that they've convinced you that you're the problem. So you don't trust yourself. You don't trust what you felt. You don't trust what you saw. You don't trust what you've been through unless someone else agrees, particularly this person, right? Particularly the abuser, because that's how the conditioning is happening, where we seek their validation. But you're waiting for someone to tell you that you're not crazy. You simultaneously often can't talk to friends or family because, God forbid, you are sharing any of this with other people, because then you're slandering the person. So you're afraid that you'll leave and that you'll regret it. You're afraid that they'll leave you. They're preying on your abandonment wounds, your rejection wounds, your need to be chosen. They know this. This is all on purpose. So I want you to really step back and see that this self-doubt was planted by the abuser and frankly watered by society, fostering that, right? You sure it's not you just overreacting? You know, some men are like that sometimes, and you hear these toxic messages, and it's not true. This is not what you need to tolerate. But you were probably taught to prioritize others' comfort over your own clarity, over what you want, certainly over your own feelings. Maybe you've learned to believe that, you know, you need to only believe pain that can be proven. Like you need proof. Did you learn that in the relationship, or did you learn that in childhood? Both. You know, was it reinforced in the relationship? Not everybody held these beliefs. You know, everyone talks about like what we must have been like as children. The truth is, some people who are in abusive relationships were in abusive households as children, but most actually weren't. But maybe there was some neglect. What did you learn as a child? Maybe you had to work hard to be seen, to be heard. Maybe performance-based love feels normal to you. But the truth is, you have learned to disown what you feel because it makes other people uncomfortable. And maybe you think that certainty will make it easier to leave, but clarity isn't certainty. It's actually courage. Did you know that? So I want you to give yourself permission, because that's all you need. Going back to what I was talking about with respect to self-validation, right? You don't need more evidence. You need more courage to believe what you already know. And it's so conflicting. And I know that. I mean, I've been there. But you're afraid to be wrong. You're afraid to make the wrong call. Maybe you fear being judged by others, judged by yourself. Maybe you've been conditioned to overfunction. Maybe loyalty means the world to you. Maybe loyalty has been reinforced to you in this relationship. You don't want to feel like you gave up. Maybe you think leaving makes you the bad one. Has he convinced you that that's the case? I know that mine did. So how you can kind of, use some action points here. Name what you feel without needing it to be validated. You're just naming it, right? That's just the first step, is just like, I feel betrayed. That's it. Or I feel like this happened. Say it out loud. I give myself permission to protect my peace. I give myself permission to leave. I give myself permission to believe what I am seeing, what I'm being presented with. And maybe you can kind of write yourself a new rule, like your peace is more important than his potential, or your beliefs are more important than him, or what you see is more valuable than what he's trying to convince you of. Come up with some kind of new rule in your own words that really sits with you. And I want you to ask yourself, if this was happening to my best friend, what would I want her to say? If this was happening to my daughter, what would I want her to say? To my sister? What would you want? What advice would you offer a friend? That seems like sometimes very cliche advice. I hear people give it all the time, but the truth is it is so important and it's so helpful if you use this as a regular practice. You can also create a list, and maybe it's every moment that he hurt you, every boundary that was ignored, every lie, every manipulation, every apology that didn't lead to change, and how you felt about those things, how those things reshaped how you saw yourself, how it's reshaped how you've seen this person. It's not just making a list of the things that he's done, but how you felt. And I don't mean angry and sad. I mean like betrayed, destroyed, insignificant, all of those things, right? Permission is not this one-time moment. It is a practice. And I wish that it was easier. I wish that it was something that I could just, give to you, but you don't need to be sure to be safe. And I think the uncertainty of, I need to know, you do know. So it's not you telling yourself, I don't need to know. You do already know, and nothing more has to happen. Even if right now nothing new is happening and you're like going through his phone or checking things or things have been good lately, enough has already happened. That's enough to leave. You don't need another thing to happen. But if another thing is happening, this is enough. Just, it's on the pile. It's that one piece back on top of the pile. You don't need to wait until it's worse to do something. You really don't, right? He hasn't hit me in years. He hasn't cheated in years. You can leave because he cheated 7 years ago. You can leave for no reason. But you are allowed to leave based on how you feel, not just on what you can prove. And I think that this is like, I think you're cheating, therefore I'm leaving you. And he's like, what? You're crazy. I'm not cheating, blah, blah, blah. That's the point, right? That's the bait of the argument to get you sucked into this argument where you feel like you have no choice. You feel like you can't leave because, you know what, you're right. You don't have any proof. You just think it. And he's made you think that you're crazy and that you're making this up. A person who treats you that way when you are feeling insecure, even if you were wrong, which I doubt, but even if you were wrong, you want to be with somebody who tells you that you're crazy when you're feeling insecure? And the truth is, somebody who's made you feel crazy and insecure when they're in fact cheating or in fact lying or betraying you in some other way or putting you down or calling you names. You don't deserve to be with somebody like that at all. Leaving is an act of self-trust. It's not an act of selfishness. So this part's hard though, right? Like you've really been trained, groomed over time to silence yourself. And I see in my coaching practice, women feel such fear for making the wrong choice and then ending up alone. Like he's going to go be happy with someone else. And I think that there's this belief that they want to change or that they could change or like people can change, right? The truth is change is unbelievably hard. And I did a video a couple of days ago on the topic of can he change? And fundamentally, no, they don't change. This is a belief. This is a mindset. They don't want to. But I know that, like we've built this whole life or this whole identity around surviving him. I don't even know if we see it that way, but that's really what it is. Like this is your life, right? You chose it. You don't have to live like this. You don't have to live like this at all. So maybe you can kind of ask yourself, like, what am I pretending to not know? Really ask yourself that. Write this down. What am I pretending to not know? What do I know that I keep minimizing or dismissing? You could look at yourself in the mirror. Tell yourself right in the mirror, I believe you. Say that. I believe you. You are allowed to protect yourself. You could make a video diary or an audio diary and say, like, I give myself permission to leave. Maybe you need to listen to that back, hear it in your own voice repeatedly, as many times as it takes. When you doubt yourself, you need to hear that voice. You could write a letter to your future self, and maybe not so much about what he's done, but how you have felt, reading your own feelings in your own words. And maybe instead of waiting for this big aha moment, this big piece of proof, this big, now I can leave, can you gather this big pile that I keep talking about? Gather all of these small, painful moments that just destroyed you. These tools can connect you to your inner voice because you don't need external proof. You need to trust yourself. You need to give back ownership over your own story and create that safety within yourself to validate yourself and to not need proof, because you want to start believing that your pain is valid, even when it's invisible. You don't need a piece of paper. You don't need a photograph. You don't need a screenshot. And you just need to know what you already know. So allow yourself that permission. What do I already know that I'm ignoring, right? You don't need a confession. I think a confession is something that we really want because we want accountability. We want, like, yes, I hurt you. I did it. You're right. I lied. First of all, most won't do that. And the ones that will lie about it. They'll lie about lying. You'll never believe him anyway, right? You don't need him to confess. You don't need your friends to believe you. You don't need your mom to believe you. You don't need a smoking gun. You need self-trust. And if it confuses you or it drains you or it makes you question your worth, this is not love. Trauma bonds mimic love, but it's not love. You don't love him. You love the idea of him. You love the potential. But the truth is, your body already knows and your heart already knows. But the only question left is, will you believe yourself? You're allowed to leave before the pain gets worse. Why does it have to get worse, right? What you know is enough. You are enough. And you are allowed to leave. I know how hard that is, but can you give yourself that permission? I know you can. I know it's hard. So I'm going to go into the chat and have a look here. Beth finally subscribed. That's fantastic. Beth read today, sometimes people try to destroy you precisely because they recognize your power, not because they don't see it, but because they see it and they don't want it to exist. Bell Hooks. First of all, if people have not read Bell Hooks' book, I'm looking for it on my bookshelf right now. It's probably beside my bed. Amazing. Bell Hooks is an amazing author. Yeah, it's first thing I talk about in marriage seminars is having full transparency in spouses' phones. It's interesting, I made a video once on Darvo, and the example that I used was going through your partner's phone and finding something. So in the skit, the person found something. The amount of people that were like, no, that's just as bad to go through somebody's phone. Going through somebody's phone is equally bad to inserting yourself into someone else. I don't think so. Cheating is not the same thing. Yes, maybe there's a betrayal there, and I get that, but I don't think people can really, unless you've been through it, understand the desperation of someone who's trauma bonded, because, you could just ask a liar. I don't know how well that'll go. The point is, you're going to get in trouble for asking. There's a consequence. You doubt yourself, you doubt them. And again, you should leave. And then you go to leave and they beg you back, or they make you feel terrible for leaving. Like this, I'm not saying that going through someone's phone is the right thing to do. It is unequivocally the wrong thing to do. But the transparency that should exist, like my partner has my phone password. He doesn't go through my phone, but he could. He's welcome to. He wouldn't find anything, but that's the point. That's the transparency. And so, especially when there's been previous cheating, you would think that the cheater would be really invested in making the relationship better. And that would involve more transparency, more like, I'm sorry for what I've done in the past and how much I want to help. I think it's like 16% of marriages survive cheating. You have to ask yourself, what is that 16%? Now, I don't know any studies that indicate whether or not that 16% is happy. That's who stays together. But if you could even assume that the most of that was happy, what do you think happens in those relationships to build that repair? Transparency is undoubtedly part of that, right? But people shift that conversation into like, how dare you go through someone's phone? They're just focusing on the wrong thing. And I think that the truth is that says a lot about a person. If that's the focus, right? You're not talking about the cheating. You're talking about catching the cheating. That's the focus. the method with which they were caught. That's the bigger offense. Only someone who's got something to hide would be focused on that part of it, in my opinion. Somebody repeated, leaving is an act of self-trust. That's so true. It's so true, right? It is. It's really challenging to get yourself out of these relationships when you want proof, because that self-doubt is so huge. So the focus becomes, how do you rebuild that trust in yourself? So I teach that in my one-on-one coaching. I have sessions that focus on breaking a trauma bond, and I also have sessions that focus on rebuilding after a trauma bond. So if you've broken free of the relationship of the trauma bond, but you don't feel healed and you want confidence and self-love and to stop ruminating and to really know and understand yourself, the rebuilding after a trauma bond sessions are perfect for that. I also have a membership called the Toxic Free Relationship Club. It's a monthly membership for this amazing active community. So the Toxic Free Relationship Club, or the Trauma Bond Recovery Course, which is a self-paced, self-guided program that people can take on their own, that gives you actionable step-by-step tools to really break free of needing somebody else's validation. There's worksheets and videos and writing and book recommendations and all kinds of things. So check out the Trauma Bond Recovery Course or working with me one-on-one. But thank you so much to everybody for being here. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Thanks so much. Bye.